Be warned, readers, this video may contain spoilers for the content included. Now that you have been fairly warned, let's begin today's retrospective. Welcome back to a series of unfortunate events by Lemony Snicket. In Chapter 2, the Baudelaires return to their home to see the rubble. Everything they once loved is now gone. With no other home to return to, they stay with Mr. Poe until he finds a legal guardian. The children's time there is none too agreeable to their previous lifestyle. The food was mundane, Mr. Poe's children, Edgar and Albert, were loud and obnoxious, and it was difficult to have a nice conversation, what with Mr. Poe being gone all the time, or being in one of his coughing fits. After an indeterminate amount of time, Mr. Poe says they will be moving out as he found a nearby relative. Count Olaf is quite literally the closest living relative to the children, despite them never hearing about him, or even meeting him under the fact that their parents had a lot of company. Not only is he a count, but he is an actor, and that's why Mr. Poe thinks the children never met him as he was so busy. The next morning, Mr. Poe drives the kids to a very pristine-looking house. They meet a nice woman named Justice Strauss. She is a judge of the High Court. Just as things were looking up for the children, it is revealed that this will not be their new home. Justice Strauss is only Count Olaf's neighbor, and his house looks horrid. Not only was it saggy and gloomy, the front door had a carving of an eye, as if the house itself was watching your every move. And so the kids move on to Count Olaf's actual house and meet the so-called Count himself. Count Olaf is described as very tall and very thin. His gray suit dirty, his face unshaven. He had one long eyebrow instead of two, and his eyes shiny, making it look like he is angry and hungry at the same time. His house was very dirty and dilapidated. Count Olaf suggests that it can be fixed with the Baudelaire fortune, but when Mr. Poe says that no one can touch the fortune until Violet is of age, the children notice a certain enraged look in the Count's eyes. Mr. Poe leaves, and Violet, Klaus, and Sunny are left all alone with Count Olaf. Wishing they could go back to the more favorable Poe household, they look down to see a tattoo of an eye on Count Olaf's ankle, just like the one on the front door. They then wonder just how many eyes were in this house, watching them, even if the Count was not there. Whereas the first chapter explains the inciting incident and shows us our main characters, Chapter 2 reveals what is undoubtedly the villain. Even if you weren't to know the story of a series of unfortunate events, Count Olaf's demeanor and actions reveal his true intentions. Almost immediately, he says he would like to use the children's enormous fortune to better his house, and in conclusion, himself. And when Mr. Poe says he can't, he is furious. The back of the book states that the children will face a greedy and repulsive villain, and I think that describes Count Olaf very well. This chapter serves as a succinct and straightforward way to reveal an antagonist. It also immediately keeps the promise of being sad and unpleasant. Violet, Klaus, and Sunny's lives have been turned upside down by having to live with Mr. Poe, and it seems very unpleasant. And then having the hope that maybe living with their new guardian might not be so bad, that feeling is clutched away as they realize the truth. And where I feel that Handler spent just enough time with Mr. Poe, and describing his children giving you the right idea of how unfavorable it would be to live there, he could have made them spend a little more time with Justice Strauss to really contrast hope and despair. Now, as messed up as that sounds, he did promise that this story would be unpleasant and miserable. He could have had them spend hours with her thinking they were going to be just fine, and then all of a sudden the truth comes crashing down on them. But the scene also serves as a just out of reach kind of situation. They see a possible future for them, and just having one glance into Justice Strauss's life, they already know that that would be a much more favorable outcome. I suppose it's up to the reader to decide which is worse, having hope just out of reach and immediately taking it away, or letting the protagonist have hope for a while and then taking it away. I think it would be more dastardly to let them be happy for a long while only to have that dream crushed, but maybe that's just me. Violet, Klaus, and Sunny have met their new guardian, Count Olaf, an actor that enjoys the motif of eyes and lives in a very run-down home. Not only have they lost their parents in their home, but do they now have to spend the rest of their young lives in a miserable home? Or are first impressions wrong in this circumstance? Maybe we'll find out next chapter. But until then, readers, keep on reading.